All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to call this meeting of the Community and Economic Development Committee to order. It is Thursday, October 3rd, 9 o'clock at the Permit Center. We'll start off with member introductions. I'm George Martinez.
Scott Myers. Mark Littlefield.
On the phone, we have
Karen Braga.
thank you, Karen,
Randy Solt.
Zach Johnson.
thank you, Randy, thank you, Zach. We'll introduce other members as they join. Thank you all for being with us. And we'll go right into our regular reports. And we'll start off with, I saw Mr.
I get called a lot of things, but I go by Wilbur.
That's good. Mr. Lance here. Thank you, Lance.
Appreciate that.
We'll turn it right over to OECD.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lance.
Well, I have, there's a lot going on in economic and community development, and I think for the department, I have many of them in economic and community development. I think one of the things a couple big things that are going on collectively, and then we'll talk about them individually. That's some code changes that we're working on in a couple of departments. We'll talk about those. We've got some plan review that we're working on. We got some significant projects that are coming to close, and we've got some consultants in town that are helping with a variety of activities. Some of those things the planning department, some of those the assembly. So as we go through departments, Mr. Chairman, I'll talk to each one of those. And I know the first thing on my list is development services. So they're working on some upcoming changes to the building code and some other things that they're working on. It's all about their Greg Swayze, the development services director, Daniel King, and section there. So they want to get an update on where they are.
And y'all want to come closer to the format for the public to see. Thank you.
Sure. So, as you guys already know, we're getting ready to start the process. Rewrite 2024 CC codes. We were able to get a formal building board for the October 9th meeting, so that'll be an official kickoff. Forming the committees, we've already been working on that, but we're still a few shorts, so we're still looking for some more volunteers to fill out those committees for that process. The other, and that's going to be about a 4-month process. So, the other thing that we are starting right now is our ISO rating survey. There's they survey our department every 4 years for staffing, plan review, inspection, training, different things. ISO would be insurance service organization, and that's where all the underwriters use to basically determine what our insurance rates will be. So this survey happens every 4 years, and we're starting that one as well. That's happening this month.
For the record, Member Brawley is with us as well, 904, Member Brawley.
Yeah, I was curious, I know you mentioned committees for the building update process. And I know it was mostly staff, but I guess I'm interested not necessarily in, fully serving on that committee, but kind of understanding what the updates are. And then I guess partly my interest is, I know there's some changes in the updated code that allow more flexibility for ADUs, allow some more innovative building materials. So I guess I just want to be able to check in. So if you could just share kind of what timeline is, or if it's something that doesn't want to.
Absolutely. So,
And just pause for a second. Member Braga asked if you could speak up, please.
so actually the committees are actually mostly folks from the private sector. We have a member of staff on each committee, and then also a member of the building board on each committee, co-chair. The rest of them, we prefer to have folks that are in the industry, in the trades, or engineers or architects. on the progress each step that we go.
Yeah, and if, just a brief follow-up, yeah, I think, I mean, ultimately it has to pass the assembly, so I think it is helpful to have some involvement or at least be sharing updates, because, you know, it will be a very technical ordinance when we see it. But I think it's helpful to be able to communicate with assembly members and the public what it's actually doing and what the changes are.
Thanks, so I appreciate that. This will be my first go around. I'm not sure how the process has happened in the past. Certainly there are some. That it will be a complete rewrite. Which also impact a lot of our policies and procedures.
And on that point,
All right, and just also, we're having difficulties with members hearing online, so I'm just gonna ask every person who's going to present to come to the table, please, so that we can hear you louder, but thank you.
Yeah, and as far as the updates go, we can definitely put out regular updates from the meetings. And in the end, what we'll have is, while it is a complete rewrite, overall, the way it's going to be submitted as a rewrite, it will come with a list of significant changes on what's coming in. So you guys will be kept up to date on the stuff that we're adopting the ADU appendix, which clarifies requirements for ADUs. We've been making those things up, with the best of our ability until now, and now there is a whole section for it. So we'll be looking at that and seeing how we can integrate that, and you'll see all of that information as it comes out. So there will be a whole document on all the significant changes, but a lot of it will be basically adopting the new version with minor changes probably to a few numbers here or there, and then major changes will be definitely letting you guys know about.
Yeah, just briefly too, I mean, I think part of the lesson that I've taken from the last year or so, in terms of all this housing work is we make some changes to code, we pass an ordinance, or there's a kind of a broad, policy direction. And then we start finding all of these things either in the process or other codes that really get in the way of that, right? That was the whole kind of story of the 3 and 4-plex changes. And so that's also why I'm interested, because I think we have these issues where things that are in our code or things that we're doing are conflicting with our actual policy goals of building more housing. And so just making sure that and I know the code update is not fixing all of those things, but just to the extent that we can make sure that we're not doing things crosswise to each other.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's our intent, to make sure that not only are things clear for you guys, but also if there's conflicts that are going to come up that need to be addressed at some point, we want to make sure you guys are aware of that up front, saying, hey, this is changing in the code, just so you're aware, this is not changed in the other codes that we already have adopted, so we can't enact it until those things get fixed. So those will be made clear for you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for the update.
I think, go to the planning department, and Brian Hill is gonna give you a sort of an update, because somebody's asked us to do a work plan, 10-year targeted plan review. So Brian's gonna give you guys an update on that. So,
Brian Hill, Plan Manager for Planning Department. Our work plan for the 10-year target plan review should be before the assembly. We're hoping that makes the addendum for the meeting on the 8th. If for some reason it doesn't make the addendum, it'll be at the October 22nd agenda. I do apologize for the delay in getting this to the assembly. I know I had originally requested a 60-day timeline to get that to you. We had a change of administration in between that time period. Not going to make excuses, but I was in and out of the office for extended periods of time in there as well, and some direction from the administration fell through the cracks. So because of that, we just had a delay to you, but we're confident with the plan that we're going for you, that we can accomplish that within a 12-month period. That's going to be an evaluation of the strategies and action items within Anchorage 2020 and 2040 land use plan. We see it as a very community-minded process, establishing a community advisory committee to assist in that review process, as well as going out to the community in a series of events to get their feedback. The important thing to note with this type of review, from the way that we see it, is we see this beyond a desktop evaluation. I can certainly have my staff sit down, crunch numbers, have a report in a matter of months, but we just see that as a bit disingenuous to the direction of this project and the fact that it's going to be determining the direction and the strategies of the municipality for the next 10 years at least. So we want the community to play a large role in the process. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your update. We look forward to seeing that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for Public Works, I want to start off by saying that Lord Kent Colhane's back. We've asked him to be our Public Works Director. And for those of you who haven't been part of this, he took a couple months off, but Kent was the Public Works Director for 1 month, and then he got asked to go downtown and help the Bronson administration lead the manager's office, which I can tell you that the folks in this department much greatly appreciated his leadership down there. But we're welcoming him back as the Public Works Director. His first day was Monday. So he still has to go through some confirmation. He does have to go through confirmation. And so for today, I will give the report, but I just wanted to have Kent here, and really glad to have him help us as Public Works Director. He will be the direct departments of traffic, maintenance and operation, and project management engineering will report to Kent, as the organization said. So I think there will be an announcement this afternoon by the administration, but since we are here and he's in the room, you're going to want to know why is he here. And anyway, really happy to have him.
The whispers already were certain.
Yes, as somebody walked in, I could see everyone going, what's going on? So, with your support, through the confirmation process, officially as a Public Works Director. So appreciate that. So
Can I confirm that you also described that we made breaking news here?
I don't know.
It hasn't been publicly announced
Yes.
yet, right?
I asked for permission.
We appreciate that. No, we really appreciate that. And
So-
also to note, Chair Compton has joined us on our line as well.
So in, as it relates to Public Works Department, there's a couple things as not any particular order, but one of them is, as the Assembly knows, the Assembly funded a right-of-way management study and a parking study. The consultant team has been really kicking off that effort with the right-of-way management study, meeting with street maintenance, meeting with the traffic department and others about the study efforts there. So we've been starting that process in earnest. We had another topic, we had some conversations with Assemblymember Bronga and Johnson, and I think in interest with Assemblymember Salt about how we are going to move forward with the Chubiak access service area projects that were bonded for. So one of the key projects there is Canyon Road. We have a project manager on board and a team on board. We're going to start efforts to get that project moving. We had some interest in another project in that area. So so more to come on that, for the structure and where it's going to be managed. We've been working with Ali and making sure that we're working together on how projects are solicited, how projects are going to be evaluated, and some of that criteria. We're going to tie that with our capital improvement process and then have that looked in synchronicity so that we're seeking comments and interest for the team at the same time. Project for the Chubiak service area will be a little bit more robust because it's beyond community councils, it's more others. So but we'll be working with that and we'll be working with that and report there. In project management engineering, similar to what Greg Sulik mentioned about changes to Title 23 that they're working on, project management engineering will be working on revisions to the design criteria manual. The design criteria manual composes of multiple chapters that relate to how we design and build everything from landscaping to our street cross sections and our lighting. And so their team is putting together a general schedule about how things are going to go together. The schedule is tied to current activities and planned activities such as the right-of-way management study, Safe Streets for All, which will help tie into that. So be looking forward to that process. Assemblymember Zalatel has had some conversations with the staff at PME, so she's in the loop on that. Maybe more specifics within those departments for maintenance and operations. I want to thank you guys for your support for the funding so that we can start ordering some graders and plows and police cars and things like that. So we appreciate that. We had a couple of questions for you there. And again, if you have questions as you move along, we're getting ready for winter season. Do street maintenance on how that's going to be, and as part of that, the administration is working on a comms plan, but basically how we can approach this winter. We are as ready as we possibly can be in our staffing levels for the Assembly and the administration. We'll keep you updated on that. As far as capital projects going on, we're gonna have some work on 15th Avenue by Merrill Field this weekend or next. So if you're driving on 15th, between Orca and Lycos, maybe you can be prepared for some delays. We've got some paving done on 36th recently. We had anticipated we were gonna do some paving on Northern Lights, just due to weather timing and others. We will be pushing that to next year. But, and I'll send you guys a link. We have a monthly project status update for those of you who want to geek yourself out on every single detail. 21 pages of all the projects we're working on. We can help you with that. And then in the traffic department, Mr. Coy had mentioned to you, we had filled Division 0 position, that the vacancy. He was successful in filling the traffic calming position with a strong applicant that we were able to attract in the Department of Transportation. It's going to be a great asset to the traffic department, and Brad and his team will, I'm looking for a summary report on how the pilot program went for the dedicated bike lane on 6th Avenue. And then he's working with the DOT on some of the initiatives the Assembly is interested in doing regarding pedestrian safety and speed limit changes. That's just not you don't like the number on the sign and you put a different number. So, and this team will be working. There's a lot going on, but we're sort of coming along our way. And so, again, instead of having Ken on board, let's get a lot of that stuff moving. Okay, let's get. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Great. Next.
I think next I'll ask Tiffany if she has maybe this one.
I don't think I really have anything relevant.
Right on. We saw ACDA here. I think Melinda Gant going to provide the update.
Thank you, George. So grant updates, EV charging station grant was successfully submitted. EV project will focus on 14 strategic sites across MOA. That includes approximately 56 charging stations. I want to give many thanks to the AWU group on this collaborative effort. We expect the award to happen in 2025. An EDA planning grant in partnership with AWU, MOA Planning, Real Estate, Code Enforcement, and UAA aims to fund a census of vacant and abandoned properties. If awarded, it will lead to a $45 million grant application for property acquisition, cleanup, and redevelopment. The expected award date for the initial grant is November 2024. The next one that quite a few people are working on, and a news release went out on the HUD program. There's a flyer over there of what that one's about. Again, many departments are involved. Health, planning, and ECD are working on this grant, which is due October 15th. Public comment period on the draft grant application will be open until October 10th. A public hearing at the Luzak Library is at 6 p.m. October 7th. And more information can be found on the ACDA website. Third and Ingber project, ACDA will be on the HLB agenda for October, so that's one thing happening with HLB. Focusing on the Alaska Native engagement for the Alaska Native Memorial. I will be there at the AFN Elders and Youth Conference surveying attendees about the location of the memorial. And we have currently met with the ANTHC, the Kluka Tribe, the ANTHC Elder Health Board, and we have a meeting today with Siri. And we are working towards having a meeting with South Central Foundation as well. Weekend market closed September 8th with a successful season. We anticipate that the market will be coming back downtown. The impact that we saw for our agency was that downtown parking significantly increased on Saturday and Sunday, which is an indication that more people were coming downtown to live, work, or shop and play, which is great. Disability with parking privilege ordinance. This is a new thing, so you heard it first, George. Parking ordinance will be going in front of the Anchorage Assembly about disability with parking privileges. Overall changes that we're proposing will be handicap designated street meters, mobility permit, which is currently in place, and new disability with parking privileges will become free to park in. New virtual permit for disability with parking privilege will be created for those that qualify, allowing the individual to park at any street meter with the handicap time allowance. And lastly, increasing the handicap fine violations. Overall, we're aiming to make it easier for individuals with disabilities to access local businesses, services, and activities. Communities can benefit economically from their patronage, fostering a more inclusive, diverse, and vibrant community environment. Midtown District Plan, which we're currently working on, we have finished up with our public meeting number 2, and we had some public engagement in the library during the month of September with surveying and asking the question, what is your vision of Midtown? And if you have a vision, what is your action to make this vision happen? We recently closed our survey and 421 people took the survey about live, work, and play in Midtown. We have an up-and-coming public meeting number 3, which has been scheduled for January 27th at the BP Energy Center at 5:30 p.m. Project is expected to be completed late spring of 2025. And then lastly, ACA board meetings that are coming up. We have one October 9th at 3 p.m. if you're interested. And then we have a development committee meeting October 24th at 1 p.m.
Excellent. Any questions from members? Thank you for the update. Moving right along to, we have no items for unfinished business, but just to flag that we will continue to look at tax exemption expansion as kind of continuing lingering project. And I've recently had the chance to meet with the administration, with Nolan, with Graham, and so there's lots working together on that front. And so I just wanted to make sure that we continue to know that that conversation is available. And I do expect that in November, we'll have dedicated time to look at some of the updates that are being on that front. We'll move to new business. And we have an update on the marijuana license compliance quarterly report. We don't have a handout here, and we'll turn it over to code enforcement. And I invite you all to come on forward. Please make sure.
Code enforcement, but I mainly do the marijuana licensing for the city.
Excellent.
Currently,
Well, hold on. Let's make sure you introduce yourself as you come forward.
my name is Elaine Keebler, Code Enforcement,
Thank you.
for land use. So I do have 2 categories here, MOA and AMCO. So the AMCO information is obviously from AMCO. And that's, they do mostly NOVs. They do have 5 items there for 5 licenses that they've given notice of violation. The main thing with the MOA, we have issued 3 charging document, and those 5 have been paid. 1 for sign violation, two for sign violation, 1 for marijuana odor. You guys have that handout, so you have that information. And then we do have charging document pending for a few of them. So we do license renewal every 2 years now. That's a change since last year. You guys have any questions on the
Yes.
marijuana?
We have one question already. Constant?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to point everyone's attention to licensee 10237. There has been an ongoing pattern of smell violations. Their marijuana odor problem is consistent. It's been reported. I've reported it a number of times. The reality is code enforcement has a really hard time substantiating it because they have to go there and it has to be happening when they get there. And many of these are happening like at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, everyone's gone home, or on a Saturday. And I have neighbors who live around that property who are essentially inundated many days a week with the smell of marijuana. That's overwhelming and quite disgusting, actually, for the people who have to live there. And so I asked for this report so we could have a sense of kind of what's been going on in the industry as we come upon the renewal season again. And we have some applications coming forward for expanded services, in particular, one that is Alaska Sense. And now I know the community has some concerns just about the operation moving where they're intending to move and expanding. But the reality is, I just want this record to be clear to all the members. If you look, there are a number of organizations who've had one or two violations and it looks like they get it figured out. There's one that is just on and on and on and on. Violation, 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 violation. And so this is a conversation I want folks to be prepared for when the question comes back before us. Has this licensee been a good steward of the public trust?
So in January, we did give a charging document for a license because we have discovered that they did have marijuana odor. For that particular licensee, we have received on a monthly basis, basically since January, a complaint for marijuana odor. We do have a procedure in place for land use to where we do stay on the property for 15 minutes. So by code in Title 21, has to be outside the lot line. So we do stick around for 15 minutes and there has to be 2 officers that's going to be on site for 15 minutes to have continuous marijuana odor for us to be defined as marijuana odor as a violation.
I recognize
additional
that.
questions?
Yeah, I recognize that you have a due process requirement to have 2 people there and be there. And I can't say that this operator is intentionally ventilating at times when they know there's nobody operating because it's after hours and on weekends. But for sure, there is a pattern here. And I receive emails very, very frequently or calls by people. And so whatever is happening is not working. And there's one licensee, again, that is continuing to establish a pattern. And if you look at the historic record, the same licensee many years ago nearly lost their license because of this location and how they were operating. And so I am just raising it up to the members to be aware and ready for a spicy conversation about this licensee if and when they come forward with a proposal to expand.
Thank you, Christopher. Any other questions from members? Don't see any other questions. Thank you for your work. The community knows that only a handful of you all is difficult to keep up with everything. We do appreciate this, and I encourage members as you think about these things, if you have additional questions, follow up with Thank you so much for the presentation. And thank you, Christopher, for flagging your concern and that awareness for us as members. We'll move to item. Thank you, sir. We'll move to item B. And Mandy is not with us today, Mandy Honest. And so members received an email with some information about the 10.80 marijuana license rewrite update. So I just encourage you all to take a look at the memo that Mandy sent to us. Review it. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to Mandy, but she'll be able to answer those and be with us next month. So it's just for your awareness. She's been working, and the clerk's office has been working on the marijuana license rewrite. Do have an update. It's in our inboxes. And make sure you review that, forward any questions to Mandy, and we can have that presented on the public record for next week. Great. And I thank Mandy for sending that over to us, and we'll look forward to any discussion on that at our next meeting. Great. Now we'll move over to item C, DBE program update. DBE stands for Disadvantaged Business Enterprises. And I asked for a program update primarily both in terms of member awareness. What is that program? Where does it live in the community, in the municipality? What role does that program have? And then to get some insights of the inner working with a point in time update. So I'll turn it over to, and I thank CAO Falsey for working with me to make the connection to having Erica Berry be with us today. So Erica, I invite you all to come forward, make yourself comfortable at the table with us, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
So I thought this slide presentation was going to be but this man, he's not here. I believe. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I am gonna try to make this brief. I was only have 10 minutes. I was thinking for like an hour to be able to speak on this. So
Oh, the joy.
you told me 10 minutes. So I'm gonna try to be brief, but hopefully everyone can get a good understanding of what the program is. So the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program is housed in the Office of Equal Opportunity at the municipality of Anchorage. This program is a federally mandated program by the Department of Transportation. And so the program, oh, thank you so much. So the program essentially in the OEO office oversees Department of Transportation. So that is FTA funded projects, FAA funded projects, and FHWA funded projects. The program was created back in 1983. Back then there was 10% of funds, federal funds, that needed to be given to DBEs. And I will explain a little bit more what a DBE is. To become a disadvantaged business enterprise, so a DBE, you have to be certified through, in the state of Alaska, it is through the state of Alaska DOT Civil Rights Office. Your business has to be 51% owned by a minority or a woman. And to become a certified DBE is a very lengthy process. And I will say a lot of small businesses that I speak to, the reason they do not want to become a DBE is because it takes months and months to become certified. You have to show financially, you have to meet all these financial, requirements and whatnot, personal financial requirements that I think a lot of businesses and individuals do not want to share. So that is done through the state of Alaska. As I hit the next. So that under the Code of Federal Regulations, who must have a DBE program, we receive direct federal funding from the FTA and the FAA. FHWA funding, mainly through the municipality, is pass-through funds through the state of Alaska. So the program looks a little bit differently just for our FHWA funded projects. This project is federally mandated, meaning yearly, twice a year, whenever they decide to call us, we have to give program updates, and that breaks down essentially to every single thing about the project. It goes down to monthly payments, how many businesses, how many DBEs are working on certain projects, what they were paid monthly, annually, the projection for the project. Typically with our FTA and FAA projects, FTA projects are a little more straightforward because of our funding through FAA and how our grants are received at the Muni. Those projects can actually last, I would say, up to 7 years where they are still open, where we at times have to go back to 2014 and pull up certain details for recipients through the DOT when they ask. So let's see. And I do want to say, our office gets a lot of phone calls about other federal funds. The DBE program through the DOT is only relates to FTA, FA, or FHWA funded projects. So other programs such as over at AWU, EPA funds, they do have a similar small business DBE program, but the OEO office does not oversee that anymore. Years ago, we passed that over to the folks at AWU to take care of. But there are other federal funding streams that the municipality receives that there are other requirements for small businesses. So the objectives of the DBE program is to ensure non-discrimination in the award of DOT-assisted contracts. The second line is what is used a lot, to create a level playing field for DBEs and small businesses that they can compete fairly for these contracts. Trying to make my 10-minute mark.
No, you're good.
I don't think I'm going to. So yes, because there's a lot to get into. Sorry.
I have a question there.
Yes.
And members feel free to send questions, let me know if you want to get in the queue. Just to hear what you just said, again, you described that the municipality has federal requirements to have DBE program.
Yes,
In your purview, you see the DBE programs related to FAA,
FTA,
FTA,
FHWA.
but there are other federally required DBE programs that we have in the municipality. Like you mentioned, AWU.
That we should, yes, yes. AWU, I'm not sure about, Department of Justice funding has been brought up to us before, but that's not anything that the OEO office has been responsible for. I'm not 100% sure because I haven't looked into those programs, but I do know that AWU, through EPA, they do have, it's a lot different than this program, but they do have, it's also called the DBE program, a smaller version of one through EPA funded grants.
You may not know the answer, maybe you do, but who's the oversight mechanism within the municipality for that? Like, who oversees your office? And then are those things also similarly overseen, or?
That's a great question. Years ago, when I was in office, I was there when it kind of, AWU was passed over to AWU. So, there's a gal, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, that is responsible for all of that over at AWU. That's other funding streams is actually a conversation that has been brought up a lot lately, such as port funding. I've had a couple of DBEs reach out to me and how they can get involved in these port projects. Like I said, it's not typically something the OEO office has done, but it's been conversations within the last month that we're having is who can oversee this and what can be done about getting smaller businesses on these type of projects.
Thank you.
Yes. So, for the Municipality of Anchorage DBE program requirements, we are currently administering a race neutral program. So there's two types of programs in the United States. There's a race neutral program and a race conscious program. Excuse me, race neutral means that goals are aspirational rather than mandatory. Race conscious is for prime contractors to win a contract, they have to meet a certain goal on their projects with DBEs. So this is not any doing of the municipalities of Anchorage. I personally think a race conscious program is more effective. I've seen over the last, I would say especially since COVID, a lot of firms do not want to become DBEs because it's not a requirement anymore. And that the reason it's not a requirement in Alaska, there was a court case that showed that there was evidence of discrimination between a minority business owner and a non-minority business owner winning contracts. And so now it is through the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, we cannot go to a race conscious program unless we can show that there is discrimination on minority businesses and contractors trying to receive federal contracts. The way that this is done to go to a race conscious program typically would be through a disparity study. The state of Alaska Civil Rights Office did one years ago. They cost over $1 million. And the evidence from that was shown that there is no discrimination on awards to minority businesses. So hence why the state of Alaska is still running race neutral programs. And so what we still do, we had a lot of back and forth conversations with our civil rights agents and the ones that oversee our DBE programs about, since we do not have concrete goals and we cannot take away contracts or deny contracts for not utilizing DBEs, we do participation goals is what we call them. And those numbers are what you will see at the bottom. And those are, for FTA and FAA, those are not concrete goals at the moment. This is a really big year for DBE. This year we are submitting our 3-year goal methodology I told you, it's a lot of information, I'm sorry. Our 3-year goal methodologies for FTA and FAA. So those are submitted every 3 years to our DBE and civil rights agents with FTA and FAA. And what they are is basically projections. We look at our projects over the next 3 years. We look at the census data, past participation of DBEs, potential subcontracting opportunities, and we use all these formulas to create these goals. which we hope to attain them annually. It can either be done through several projects that will equal that overall percentage. Like I said, FAA is pretty straightforward with our projects. FAA is not, due to our funding. We have to get assembly approval for projects. A lot of our grants are reimbursable, so we kind of do it backwards with our FAA grants. We don't have the money up front when we start a project. So the projects that I'm going to show you that are upcoming for those will definitely vary throughout the years. I think we're still waiting on snow removal equipment from the FAA to approve, which was over 2 years ago, a grant that we had put in. And also factors like the weather plays a lot into these projects when they actually move forward. So I just want to touch a little bit on how to find DBEs. The DBE directory for the state of Alaska is housed through the state of Alaska Civil Rights Office. It's by NAICS codes, so what type of work your firm does, and that's how you get certified as a DBE. You have to list what type of work you do, and that's how you can be searchable in the system. And I listed the directory on there. Currently, there is 233 total DBE firms in the state of Alaska, 203 in the central region, so that includes Anchorage, Kenai, Palmer, that area. And I was curious, like I said earlier, because we do get a lot of complaints from DBEs, I guess just that the program is kind of going downhill. And like I said, a lot of that is the certification process for DBEs. You have to renew it every year. And for a lot of small businesses, it's a lot of work to go through all of your financials. They don't have staff of, 50 or whatnot people. But I did look, and in 2016, there was 215 DBEs in the state of Alaska. So I guess in a sense, it's good that that number is rising and not significantly dropping. So this is the state of Alaska where you can look up the website where you can look up DBEs, and you can just see, for example, the vendor name. And then it will say if they're women-owned or minority-owned, and then what type of work that they are able to do and what region they're in. Like I stated, the municipality of Anchorage, we are in the central region. So when we do our goal methodologies, we send out any information to DBEs, it is just in the central region. This is, next one looks like a big red block, but I didn't want to give away any information of our firms. This is our municipality list of our MOA bidders. So this includes DBEs and non-DBEs. So this list has been created and it has to be submitted annually to the federal government. Anytime a DOT federal contract goes out, we have to list all the firms, whether they're successful or not, who have bidded on the project. And that includes their subcontractors as well as their DBEs. So I blocked it out because it has their annual gross receipts on there and some personal information. But this is also the list that we use to look at our DBEs that are bidding on municipal projects. And if a lot of DBEs, the goal of the overall program is that DBEs graduate from the program and become prime contractors and can bid on projects, not as a sub anymore. So that's kind of why we track that information. So, under the 49 CFR, which is the Federal Code of Regulations, they're recently, I would say in the last 5 to 10 years, they created a small business program. So it is an emerging small business program where you do not have to be a minority or woman-owned business. And this is where my office works with the Small Business Administration a lot. So this, this program is essentially supposed to be mirror the same as the DBE program, but just small businesses. We send out projects, whatnot, to businesses. And believe it or not, I would say at least 50 to 60, maybe even more, firms that we see working on municipal projects are technically small businesses in the SBA's eyes. To a very small micro business, they are not. But they have to have assets totaling less than $6.5 million, which is a lot of money. So, and the point of the program is to really try to unbundle larger contracts to smaller businesses, DBE businesses, so that. So this is just I just want to give examples of some active FA and FTA grants that we currently have. Two of them right now, we have a runway design project, which is a very smaller project. Our Merrill building improvement projects, all of our FAA projects that we report are AIP grants, which are airport infrastructure grants. And so we do have DBEs working on those. Our FAA projects, like I said a couple of times, are a little iffy since COVID because we received a lot of CARES funding for building improvements and whatnot. And the office we only are responsible for reporting AIP grants. Like I said, they get very backed up. We're still waiting for snow removal equipment from 2 years ago. I put the bottom one on there, that is an FTA contract. That's our MV Transportation, Paratransit, and Demand Response Service. And I wanted to put on there that this is a DBE because really the DBE program applies to contracts that have subcontractable opportunities, for the project. And so interestingly enough, MV Transportation, they were awarded this contract again a few months ago, or I'm sorry, the end of 2023, I believe it was, and they actually hire out a DBE to do their uniforms. So, which is not a typical DBE service. It's typically construction and whatnot. So I just want to use that as an example that there's a lot of DBEs out there that range on the scope to giving uniforms for a project. And so this is in.
So Eric, we're going to be. Yeah. So if you could give us the final kind of conclusion, I have a couple of questions, and then give members the opportunity to reach back.
Yes. Okay, so this is just an example. This is what we report for the FAA. We have to report once a year. So it just shows prime contracts that are awarded. On the very bottom, you will see in section C, prime and sub contracts currently in progress. And then on the very bottom, it says total payments of contracts completed during the reporting period. And you can see all the way to the far right, we have 10.9% of our projects, so over $500,000 to DBEs. These are just an example of one of the reports that we send to our federal agents that oversee our programs. These are the upcoming projections, and this is for our upcoming FAA projections for 2025 to 2027. And you will see right now, as I stated, the goal methodologies, which will be posted on the OEO, are posted on the OEO website. They're still getting updated. They're not officially due until December, but they have a breakdown of projects and subcontractable opportunities for the projects. And our goal methodologies, which go over all this, are sent out to our DBEs also. This is our one for FTA. And all this can be found in the slideshow that she sent. And this is just some examples of what we try to do to reach certain businesses and small businesses and let them know about. And that's it.
Hey.
All right.
I appreciate I'm trying an inside joke. Appreciate not seeing t-shirts today.
T-shirts.
Yeah, presentations with the swag.
Oh.
I think keeping to the numbers and the facts are really
Yes,
important.
no, I know, I'm sorry.
That was my hope for members to be familiar with the programs, get awareness, to see the numbers that are swirling around, and think about the economic impact when we're talking about small businesses and doing business with the municipality, how important those opportunities are for us. And I'm also interested in, and I was flagging the chair, just a larger question about where they all live and how we can have a better tracking of them from a policymaking perspective.
Yeah.
Important question.
And that is something that we're looking into right now. There's a program called B2G Now. It is a DBE minority compliance software and tracking system. And that is a reason that I'm still around, because a lot of this information, like I said, these projects, they're projected to be 3 years. They can end up being 5 to 7+ years. And a lot of the information is stored in my brain or on notepads. And a lot of times we have to go back 4 or 5 years and gain information, you know, what happened in May 2016, what payments were made. And so we're looking into this system because really it will give a good breakdown of percentages of businesses, who is bidding on them and whatnot. And so that's something that I think would be really beneficial to the municipality and the office in general, just some stability for anyone that comes in the future to pick up on.
Thank you for that work. Thank you for the update.
Yes.
Karen?
It's curious to me, you're trying to encourage small business and maybe people that English isn't the first language, and you talk about this onerous process to become a DD. And is there any talk of trying to streamline that process? Are there any states that have figured that out, or?
You know, I'm not sure, and that would be, I do have meetings often with the state of Alaska, the Civil Rights Office. They're like the counterparts to our office. Obviously, they're a larger scale. I know for a while they were very understaffed. I think now maybe they have 12 plus people. But I think it's just a lot of documentation is needed, and that's just from the federal regulations to certify a business. You'll see a lot of people, their husband owns the business, they try to become a certified DBE to get these contracts. There's just a lot of verification. I think that can't be done very quickly. You know, that if it's a husband and wife, that the woman is 51% an owner of it. So I'm not sure, but that is a good question that, because I do get a lot of complaints about that.
Yeah.
But
Thank you.
Yeah. Anna?
Yeah, just a brief question. I was browsing the list and I saw, well, some names I recognize a lot of Alaska-based folks, but then I saw people based in other states too.
yes.
So this is not for necessarily Alaska businesses, it's for doing business in Alaska.
Yes, and so firms, to do business in Alaska, there's DB certified in another state that does not cannot count towards our participation goals. They need to be certified in the state of Alaska as a DB.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, sorry, it took so long.
There's a lot there, and,
Yes.
and I think that was the main point. There's a lot of work there, a lot of tracking and a lot of responsibilities and a lot of opportunities. Thank you for being with us. Moving forward, we have a presentation on childcare sector innovation. I want to shout out, thank you. I saw Representative Zach Fields in the house with us, so thank you for being with us today. And we have a presentation from Erin Baldwin-Day.
Is it okay for me to stay here, or do I need to?
It depends on how loud you are. I'm just tracking the members.
I will use my big girl voice. I think we have a presentation to pull up. Just so I can take the temperature, how many parents are in the room? Grandparents, perfect. How many parents of kids under the age of 10? Okay. So I don't think I'm telling you anything that you don't know about the childcare landscape in Anchorage. We know we have a childcare shortage here. We know that the cost of care is extremely high. I am here today as a member of the steering committee, or rather the advisory team for a worker-owned childcare cooperative that is being launched downtown. I brought a couple of compadres with me. This is Christina Eubanks Ohana. She's the director of Hillcrest Childcare Center and the new project manager for the Citywide Childcare Cooperative, and Zach Fields, who is our fantastic advisor and partner in crime. And we are here to talk a little bit about why childcare wage innovation is necessary to retain a high-quality workforce, which is a major barrier right now to providing childcare in Anchorage. And we are here because we believe that our local economy and our local economic development actually hinges on the availability of high-quality, affordable childcare. So our interests are to elevate the existing childcare workforce and to make wages match the importance of childcare, and to develop political influence through a union relationship to draw down additional funding into the childcare sector. So what we know, and this quote is actually from the 2024 Anchorage Childcare and Early Education Fund Implementation Team report, is that childcare workers experience embarrassingly low pay and minimal benefits. And by embarrassingly low pay, we're talking about something that's very similar to what someone who works at McDonald's would make. And the benefits are sketchy at best. Next slide. Childcare workers are expected to engage in ongoing training, but that training doesn't pay, and that training is generally unpaid unless an individual childcare center chooses to compensate their employees for gaining additional training. Additionally, the assessment, the quality assessment of childcare centers hinges on the educational attainment of employees. These are called SEED levels, for anyone who's unfamiliar. And this is the leveling for SEED, the SEED protocol. And this is something that's been established, not just in Anchorage, but statewide. This is a statewide rubric, essentially. So this is the ladder of training that's expected. This ladder of training does not correspond to increased wages. Next slide. What we're proposing, very simply, is an apprenticeship model. We are borrowing from the wisdom of the labor sector, of unions. We are proposing a pilot program that actually professionalizes the childcare sector, that elevates the existing workforce, and that builds the public will, the political will, for additional investment in the childcare sector. How would we like to do that? We would like to actually tie wages and educational attainment together. We're proposing that a small group of childcare centers opt in to a pilot program that basically says we are going to embrace an apprenticeship model. We are going to move our employees through an educational cohort, just like an apprenticeship program would. And that educational attainment will be tied explicitly to an increase in wages for childcare workers at those centers. We're proposing that any center that opts into this model would pay a base wage to their employees, and that ACCE funds would create the gap funding to meet the threshold of additional wages for those workers. We also propose that this model actually leverages the influence of unions by connecting an apprenticeship model with an existing union which knows how to administer such programs, and for that relationship to explicitly add value to the sector, which at this point does not have a robust source of advocacy. So there is not an entity in the state of Alaska that specifically advocates for childcare workers. And that's deeply problematic when it comes to attaining public funding for this very, very critical service. So that's our proposal. We are here because we would love to take your questions, hear your feedback, hear your pushback, and hopefully make this proposal even better before we bring it before the ACCEE. What are we calling it? Yeah, the board. There's another word though. Advisory, it's not advisory, it's something else. Anyway, the ACCEE board has just been seated. So, questions, comments, concerns?
Questions from members? Anna?
Yeah, thanks. And I know we had an opportunity to briefly talk about this before. I guess my two questions are, one, what is the ballpark funding amount? Because we know that full fund is $5 million a year. And then two, if this is, say, 2 or 3 years, for example, some period of time, what happens? Like, what is the sustainability plan after that period? Or is this something where it would be we continue to invest for a fair amount of time?
Excellent question. So we're aware that 2 million of the 5 million has been earmarked for innovation, and we're proposing to use a portion of that 2 million for this project. The total amount that would be needed would be dependent on a variety of factors, which we don't actually know yet. One of those would be the number of centers that would be interested in opting into the pilot. One would be the existing educational attainment of the employees at those centers, and what kinds of administrative costs we might need to factor in for administration of the program. So these are all questions that we also have, Anna. So thank you. But tapping that 2 million and understanding that this would be a small pilot to begin with, we don't anticipate that this would, even meet that $2 million threshold. What was your second question?
It was just kind of like, what would be the time frame? Is it something where it's like, this is initial funding, like you said, and then what happens?
So the goal would be year-over-year funding for 2 to 3 years. At that point, expecting that the relationships that were developed would have yielded some political will to draw more federal and state dollars into the child care sector.
Karen?
So you're looking at the mortar already set up childcare centers, not creating a new one, or is that possibly something that could be part of this? I was thinking about municipality, it's got empty floors. We're right for a childcare center.
Yeah, great question. So the worker cooperative model that we're piloting downtown would be a new center that would adopt this model from the ground up. One of the reasons that we're very interested in the worker co-op model is because we understand that it's much easier to replicate and would make use of some of the empty spaces in our city with at a lower barrier, and would also place worker control at the center of those operations, as opposed to some of the models we have now, which are very top down and really inhibit childcare workers from having a meaningful say in how their centers are functioning. So we're hoping to create sort of best practices within that cooperative pilot and then be able to replicate that elsewhere. This particular proposal, we're expecting to use the Citywide Childcare Co-op and then a couple of other established centers, to include Hillcrest. And also the Little Bears in Birdwood is very interested and invested in experimenting with this model. Potentially one more center, and then that would be our initial cohort of organizations.
First of all, thank you for the questions, members. Just talk a little bit about what other places have done with respect to the long-term costs, like from initial gap piloting to have other communities sustain funding without passing the costs downward.
Right, great question. Zach, you want to speak to Washington State?
Sure. In Washington State, there's a model similar to this. One of the benefits of registered apprenticeship is that our congressional delegation a few years ago led the effort to make apprenticeship funding ongoing permanent reauthorization of federal apprenticeship funding. So there's an element of training stability there. And I think as we see more localities around the state making local investments, the state legislature this year increased investment. So 2 years ago, we put in $7.5 million. This year, with the passage of both appropriations and a new law, that total is closer to $15 million. We're actually starting to reach a critical mass in combined federal, state, and local funding. And the apprenticeship model, because of ongoing federal funding, arguably is the best way. And under apprenticeship, you actually have to have the wage progression. So it's transparent. Workers know they're going to progress through those wages, and there's governance structure with oversight.
And to follow up on that, are there any communities that leverage those in partnership with the public local dollars the way we have the ACE board and our local dollars? Any communities do that sort of leveraging and or with private sector? I'm thinking of Oakland, for example. Several years back, I had a chance to visit them, and they leveraged local taxes that were dedicated, but they leveraged them in a trust that essentially went to the main corporations and said, match us, because these are the investments that we have to have in this sector for the economy to work. So they started leveraging upward, essentially resolving the gap question as well. Are you tracking any of those types of models as well?
Yeah, we're definitely paying attention to the fact that there's now a pretty significant corporate tax credit for investment in childcare centers. So expecting to pull that into the mix. I was not aware of the Oakland model, but I love that. And I'll definitely do some digging and some research into that option. That seems to make a lot of sense to me. Additionally, there is a pilot that's being done right now in June that we are hoping to learn from. So there's an apprenticeship model that's been worked out by a really brilliant woman there, and we actually have a meeting with her next week. Hope to learn more about how exactly she's done the implementation in June.
Excellent. Any other questions from members? I don't see any other questions. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the guests joining you today, your band, and this is exciting work. It is. I love the framework.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I do have a question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Tim.
Thanks. I don't know if I kind of caught it or missed it, but what's the government nexus in this project?
The government nexus?
Yeah, what is our role in your conversation? Like, we're getting informed. I assume there's a reason.
Yes, we're here because we understand that this committee does a lot of thought work around economic development in Anchorage, and we wanted to be visible in the conversation prior to moving to engaging with the ACE board.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And for the clarification. Excellent. Well, we thank you for being with us. This is a great conversation that this committee welcomes. And we look forward to it moving forward, the project, and keeping us informed. Excellent, thank you. And there's the flag that may be legislative overlap with respect to legislative committee and with respect to tracking some of that alignment. So thank you for flagging. Exciting work. Now we'll turn to street, different street, D Street. Capital D. And we have a presentation from CDA on the D Street plan, but it will be delivered by Daniel McKenna Foster. Range.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Daniel McKenna Foster, Long Range Planning. We're doing the D Street Area-wide Planning Project and D Street Area-wide Plan, which we've been working on with ACDA for a couple of years now. This came out of the EPA Brownfields grant, and there's a little bit more information on that. So what is the Brownfields grant? It's an EPA program to look at properties that might have had industrial use or other sort of environmental contaminants. And this looks at how to do the assessment to fix that. So the community has gotten 3 brownfield grants. We get progressively bigger ones. We just got $1 million awarded last year. So it's a great program. Here we had EPA Regional Administrator Casey Sixkiller from Region 10. So EPA came up. It's a great program for us, great program for EPA. We do brownfield assessment throughout the bowl. There's no cost to property owners. You just can't be the one who caused the contamination. Area-wide planning is a component of the grant. So basically, the EPA likes if you do a bunch of assessment in one area, then you can use the EPA money to think about tying some of the redevelopment opportunities in that area together through an area-wide plan. And that's what we did with D Street. In our next grant, which is going out to RFP soon, we have Muldoon area as a focus area for area-wide planning. So basically, to be eligible for an area-wide plan, you need to have done some brownfield assessments there, but there's no shortage of brownfield sites in Anchorage that need assessment. So we're looking forward to that. That'll probably be starting next year. We have to go through the RFP process. So this is just sort of an overview of what we did with the last brownfield grant, area-wide planning, and hopefully get some ideas thinking about what can happen next in Muldoon or other areas around town. So here's the area, D Street. This is what we picked out. We did some assessments here. I think we did some other brownfield assessments in some other areas. And so this was a long process talking with ACDA, thinking about where does it make sense to focus our energy. And ACDA has done a lot of work to look at this area, which is Block 102, and most of it, and thinking about how ACDA, what role they can play there, redeveloping that. And so this project was really to sort of help people understand what might be possible down there and kind of show the municipality's commitment to, we really want to make something happen here, right? There's been a lot of talk about eventual redevelopment of the JCPenney garage, what to do with the old Nordstrom's building. And then we'll see, there's a lot of other stuff going on downtown right now, which is kind of cool to talk about. So this project, we did a lot of public outreach. We came up, we talked to a lot of stakeholders, and it's all in the plan, and there's a link in this presentation. But, and so just talking with people, what are you seeing down there? What do you think would be great for this area? What are some issues with this area? And it's all in the plan, and it sort of captures all of that and puts it into text. We also had a great pop-up event. This was last February or March, I believe, at the museum. We got hundreds of people come through just talking about what they would love to see in this area. Some really cool ideas about how to get that part of the city connecting better with the Park Strip. I mean, of course, everybody's saying we want to get more housing. That also aligns with our downtown plan, which was all about housing. And again, a lot of this kind of lines up with our downtown plan in general. How do we get more people downtown? So things we heard through public outreach, people like D Street is a pedestrian centerpiece, connecting with the adjacent museum and federal buildings. You know, right now the museum is kind of far out there. It'd be great to tie that together. Take advantage of the Park Strip, that awesome solar access. It'd be really cool to have more housing there. Build housing first, think about orientation north-south. don't build any more parking, ensure quality streetscapes, outdoor gathering spaces, pathways. And there are a lot of other issues too, right? There are a bunch of alleys in those areas. Just gonna go back to this one. So, there are still alleys here, and we have to think about that. And these two, when nothing's built there, you don't think it's an issue, but alleys, they often have service infrastructure like sewer, water, utilities, that sort of thing. So we tried to look at this whole area as comprehensively as possible. So this is a link to D Street plan. Basically, if you go to Anchorage Brownfields, you'll get to our page and you'll find it there. And in the plan, there's a lot of sort of exploration of what might be possible, right? So this isn't a pro forma, it's not totally prescriptive, but it was thinking about, and this is, about 2 years ago at this point, what might be potentially feasible, right? It's very tricky to estimate what the retail market might look like in Anchorage, next year or 5 years from now. But this was our consultant kind of looking at, well, here's what you might be able to do. And again, a lot of this project is getting people to think about what's it going to look like in 10, 20, 30 years, right? And so, always great to do renders. This is block 102. This is the area where ACDA has the biggest interest and where the meeting would have the most sort of influence on what happens. But again, it's kind of cool, right? What could happen down there? Maybe this could change the way that the city interacts with the park strip, and the park strip really becomes that sort of open space. And then, of course, we always heard we don't get enough renders in the winter, so it was very cool to see that. And then also just thinking about some large with the rights of. Also going to plug our other project that we're doing right now, Downtown Streets Engineering Study. A lot of work looking at what do we do with the public rights of way downtown. This project kind of fed into that a little bit, but it is an ongoing conversation. They identified some opportunity sites, and again, many of these are private property. So we're not saying something is going to happen to this, but looking at this, these are the kind of sites that, hey, maybe something could happen here if the property owner is interested. Those might be some areas where it might be worth focusing some energy. There's a bunch of actions in there. And again, this isn't an adopted plan of the 2040 plan or anything like that. It's really sort of a guide. Here's what we could potentially do. If we want to do something, maybe we start here. And again, I mentioned there's a lot of other activities going on. We have the transit center study, which eventually they'll announce where that might go. We have downtown streets engineering study. We have, there's been a lot of work from Roger Brooks and the American Institute of Architects came downtown. People talking about what can we do downtown, and then we have this specific area concept. But to that, the more I was kind of thinking about this, it is one thing about our downtown plan. It said focus the effort on a few specific areas, because that's where it makes most sense, right? You build on investments to public investments, which sort of help with private investments. So just looking at this, so here's the D Street area plan, and here's block 102, right? So we have ACDA working on that. We have some larger planning ideas about this. We also, with the downtown streets engineering study, we're looking at 5th and 6th, making some improvements there. And then there's also E Street, right? It's not clear where the transit center is going to go, but E Street will likely factor into a major transit route anyway. There's going to be a lot of buses down there. So rather than that becoming something that surprises us, something we could plan for, right? It could be a street that's designed to make it easier for buses so people have better expectations about what's going to be there. And then we have other stuff too, right? So Anchorage Downtown Partnership has been talking about better programming in Town Square Park, getting that more active. We also have the Bradford Park sort of site plan process, which is going on right now. We've also been talking about, let's see, open streets maybe on 4th. That's been a discussion. Downtown Community Council said we'd really like to see closing the streets to cars on a limited or expanded basis. We've heard some great ideas from the mayor's office and encouragement on that. Recently, we talked to ADP about closing sections of the street where the businesses would be the most excited about it. Because again, anything we do downtown, we want to make sure it bolsters commerce, right? We want to make sure it implements the downtown plan, but also does something that people want and people say, wow, that's really cool. So you can kind of see here that it's not all contiguous, but there is sort of this wandering area, and you can think in the future, it might be cool. You start here, you kind of wander through here, you end up over here, and then, you go have dinner or something else over here. And then thinking about it too, you have the new Aviator Hotel, which is recently remodeled, and the transit center. So there's a lot of stuff going on downtown, and it's pretty cool to think about. And it's worth keeping in mind, how can we make sure that all these efforts and all these initiatives are sort of working together at once and we're making the most of them? So I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Karen?
So on one of the pictures, it had a number 2 on a building and it looked really tall. And I thought that
Destination Hotel.
possibly that was, the current garage. But am I,
So one of these are different.
no, it was a different one. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Well, what is planned for the garage? Maybe I was kind of alarmed because it looked like it was where the garage is now, and it looked like it was rendered to be something really tall. And I'm one of these crazy people that something that blocks sun coming from the south really would be detrimental to Town Square Park.
That's the.
Been biking lately and, just yeah, that tall thing, that's not Destination Hotel, that's not the garage, right?
So in this image, this would be the JCPenney garage. Here's the mall. Here's the front nursery truck. Here's the Town Square Park.
Yeah, if you want Sixth Avenue to be a nice pedestrian corridor, you don't want to shade it. That's for sure. I'm thinking frost, I'm riding my bike this morning anywhere where it's shaded. Slippery, frosty, feels cold, I get into the sun, I'm like, hey, I'm riding in the sun, I feel good.
Yeah, through the chair if I could.
Yes, sir.
So when we were working on actually the downtown code update, we talked to Simon, who owns the mall, right? And it's a big regional mall, and they own part of JCPenney. I think ACD will jump in on this. And we asked them, said, well, what are your plans for JCPenney? What do you want to do there? And he said, we can't do anything because there's height limits on it. There's height limit restrictions, right? And so you've obviously identified there's the play between, we don't want shadows, but we also do want development. And the other piece too is you do need people, right? You need people for these spaces to be active. And this is the center of the city, and currently there are some height restrictions that apply here, but they don't apply anywhere else. So it becomes kind of tricky because when you have a set of rules that apply here, but not here, it's not an equal application of the law, right? Unless there's a sort of transfer of ownership rights, which on some of those, I think the muni bought it and purchased a deed restriction, and there's a record of, okay, we've now limited the future development up into the air, but not on all of those. So that is very tricky, and that's maybe as far as I go on that, but this was when talking to the property owner, saying, what would it take to develop this to get more people downtown? I mean, that's sort of the trade-off, right? It's the city, it's the most urban part of the state, and we have the blocks we have, but I don't know if ACD has more comments on the garage or talk to Simon or.
I'll give that to my.
So, there's a lot of activity around the garage. Because of the agreements with the parties involved, it's difficult to talk about specifics, but the redevelopment of the JCPenney garage is something that we've been working on years. And it's been a sort of a long process to work with properties and secure that purchase of that building. So that's something that we've got actually as a priority for 2025 is to execute that. And that's about all I can really say about the project itself. But when it comes to the deed restrictions and the height restrictions that you're talking about, I know that as we've been looking at developing that property, we've been discussing that. But there's going to be height increases in that building. You'll know how it's going to affect the shadow. Of course, that would be
I'd suggest you flip the whole operation. Your destination hotel is back looking at the park strip.
We would love that. If you simply would like to support with funds, we could purchase, those are all private buildings, right? We'd have to buy the private owners out. We have to go in there and purchase those properties. Nothing is impossible.
Thank you. Thank you. We have Anna and then Christopher in the queue.
Yeah, just a brief comment and a question. Comment is, it's so interesting to look at renderings like this because it just reminds us how much of our downtown is surface parking lots. And I know that's not new. But I think, so what we're talking about is literally making our downtown function like a city downtown. And I think that's really what the community wants. And so I hear the concerns about shadowing. The reality is the only place that it makes sense to put tall buildings in this town is downtown and midtown. And so what this is really building out when you walk in most other cities that you would expect to see in a downtown. So I support this. I understand the concern, but we're talking about a real estate market and we cannot just tell people what to do, to a point, with the real estate property. The question though is actually on the brownfields. This is kind of a side note, but since this is the brownfield project, I'm curious, what are the kinds of uses that have created brownfields? Because I know there's a spectrum of like, a super fun site that's like very contaminated all the way down to an old gas station, which is what was in Spenard underneath that now Cook Inlet housing property. But I guess I'm also thinking about like all of the car washes we're building. We're building more gas stations, right? Like, are we basically generating a bunch of new brownfields that we will have to deal with in 30 years? And at what point do we say we're going to stop doing that? And I say that because car washes I know have chemicals, right? And there's other things so I don't know if they're a contaminant or not, but I wonder.
Through the chair, yeah, that's a great point. Actually, Superfund are their own thing, military is their own thing, but most brownfields, yeah, it's oil tanks, it's dry cleaners, it's pretty much anything. And the beauty of this program is it's about removing that uncertainty. It's a little bit of uncertainty from the development process. But unfortunately, the program is backwards looking, not forwards looking. So that is something. And it really deals with ownership. So you can't do a brownfield for an owner who's caused the contamination. So it does. I mean, the muni can often take in contaminated properties and then do the assessment on it, but that's a whole other piece. But yeah, the program does not look at whether new brownfields are coming.
So we're just on basically a rotating cycle of liability eventually, but it's great that we're doing this. Thanks.
Yeah, it's the cleanup after the mess. Christopher?
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to first rebut a little bit of a statement that you can't have a great walkable downtown and shadows. In fact, if you go to Central Park in New York City, there are shadows, there are buildings. If you go anywhere in the world, in a city, there are buildings and you still have walkable environments. So first, I want to rebut that at its face. Second, I want to say that the Downtown Community Council rejected the approach by a group of advocates who are trying to re-establish lower heights for buildings downtown. They rejected it outright because it doesn't have anything to do with the healthy and vibrant downtown. What it has to do with is people coming in from outside of downtown and trying to assert their belief that they have rights over the property owners. And I really want to appreciate the individual who said, yeah, we can do all of these things if we have money and we buy out the property owners and their rights. That's in fact what happened on one building downtown. We have what's called an air park, a park in the air above one building next to Town Square Park, and it cost $500,000 30 plus years ago. And so I'm not sure what the scale of cost would be to secure those rights if we wanted to actually follow the law as relates to property rights and not just take something from people. But it would be in the tune of probably tens of millions of dollars at this point because of the shift in values around our downtown. And so I do want to, again, put on the table here that there are other concepts starting to emerge, like looking at transit corridors between Campbell Lake and Honey Bear Road, up Hillside, up Rabbit Creek Road, and including a transit supportive development corridor, increasing the density on Victor between 100th and Diamond. Because if we're going to start to have citywide efforts by members to look at where they can put their hands and ratchet up or down growth, it's time to start looking at areas of town that have historically been unwilling to grow and ratchet that growth curve up. And maybe then we can make some investments with public money to get higher density housing built in places that have historically not been participating in the process. And so I just want to say thank you to all the folks who are pushing to reduce heights in downtown, because it's like a balloon. You squeeze here, it pops out there. Squeeze hard enough, it's going to move to a neighborhood near you. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Member Bronco, would you like to?
Oh, I just wanted to call a point of order. It just sounded like a threat. And I think this is a conversation, and the suggestion was just flipping tall for short, closer to the park strip, which would be a lovely, beautiful place for that hotel. Sounds like that's not workable because of ownership. But threatening groups that don't support, I think, is really uncool.
Thank you. Any other questions from members about the presentation or thoughts? I will share. I am from the city of immense density originally, so I have a essentially kind of different vantage point around shadowing and economic vitality. It hasn't, to Christopher's point, hurt places like New York City in that way. But New York City is not at the same latitude as Anchorage, and so shadows are very different. And so being aware, being present with those conversations, I think is important. And to hear them in a thoughtful space, I think is helpful without leaning into what Member Brunga described as kind of a feeling of aggression to some extent. But I also would say that there is a really important point about economic development and the patterns across all of Anchorage. And so making sure that we are sharing both opportunities and challenges, I think is an important point that I heard. But I think things could always be delivered in different ways. And so I appreciate all of the members' comments on this point. And I appreciate
Member Martinez.
Is that Randy?
It is.
You have the floor, sir.
Hey, thanks. I just wanted to comment on Member Constant said, so this happens all the time. The home initiative, transit supportive corridors, ADUs, members are constantly bringing things forward that interfere or change other districts. So I think it's just how we do business. I don't think it's a threat. I think legislation's doing the right thing. People in the city have concerns about what's going on in their city, and they're bringing it forward, and we'll move forward with the best legislation, whether it should be moved forward or not, but it's part of the public process. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Christopher, I'll have you back in the queue.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Randy, it was very interesting at the Downtown Community Council. It was asserted by two advocates who apparently are working with you on an ordinance that would change heights around Town Square Park. They asserted that Mr. Voland and I had knowledge of your ordinance. And I want you to answer, have you shared with either of us your ordinance? Because the misinformation being spread by the advocates was quite offensive when they actually asserted, even over the fact that I told them I had never heard anything about this ordinance, that they said, yes, you do, you know.
Member Voland and I did have that conversation a while back about this concern.
I'm going to ask members to, I'm going to ask members to pull this conversation offline because it's not germane to our discussion point right now. I think it's going into a particular place of a type of disagreement that is not necessarily required for us to be discussing on this particular agenda today. And so I would respectfully ask the members to pull that conversation offline. I think you've identified issues, you flagged it, it's on the record, something to whatever extent you described, but I think it's not germane to our discussion at this point. Thank you, members. At that point, it's a comment on the.
In connection with the Brownfield grant.
Thank you,
I just want to update everybody. ACDA is part of the Brownfield Coalition. Daniel McKenna Foster leads it from the Long Range Planning Group. The RFP has been submitted. It is proposed to do October 22nd. ACDA is in particular, and inclusion is on the tribe, and then who else is on it? Huh? Habitat for Humanity is all part of the coalition. So I know our entire group is very excited to get this going. We've been waiting for a while for EPA to allow us to release the RFP. So when we get it going, every single one of our projects has had some form or fashion of a brownfield, whether it was lead, paint, whatever, to more extensive stuff. So we're well aware that this is well needed to move development projects forward. So
thank you. We'll close this item. I appreciate the presentation, appreciate your the work behind this. Are there any members of the public here that wanted to be heard? I don't see anyone in person. Ask if there are any members of the public online that have a comment to share. Having seen none, we'll end on time. 10:30, we'll call the meeting.